I've gathered 190,000 views on academia and 60,000 on ResearchGate. And on academia, I've got 1,900 followers. So it seems I've become quite a star of sexual mutilation.
Hello, Intactivists. Today I am with Michel Herve. How are you doing today, Michel?
Fine, thank you.
How did you find out that circumcision is harmful? What got you involved in researching it?
Very good question, because that's a question that's how I began. Yes, and I began in 1980. I was a pupil in the psychoanalysis department of Paris 8 University. And I had been working in this department for 5 years, I think. Oh, yes, at least 5 years. When I discovered that Freud had been very affected by his own circumcision. Sigmund Freud affected by circumcision is a very serious way, since I found out that he committed several clinical and one huge theoretical mistake due to his trauma. The most fantastic one is his theory of the Oedipus, which is wrong when he simply copy paste it from Sophocles, because there is nothing new in the world. I mean, Freud did not invent the Oedipus complex. Sophocles did. But when Freud affirms that the resolution of the Oedipus complex goes through the castration complex, and then he's absolutely wrong. He's absolutely wrong, because in the Oedipus complex there is no castration complex at all. Castration complex is a projection by Freud himself of his own circumcision. He projects that on the whole humanity, which is absolutely wrong, because for Sophocles, the threat that makes an end, that gives an end to the Oedipus complex, is a death threat. Laios wishes to punish his son Oedipus by death, exposing him in nature to wild beasts. This is a threat of death. And there is castration complex of the famous Freud's castration complex is totally stupid. It doesn't mean anything. It is very, very wrong.
What is Freud's castration complex? Can you go in detail?
Freud says that which gives an end to the Oedipus complex. Oedipus complex means that you want to kill your father for a boy in order to possess your mother. That's Oedipus complex. In the head of the child, there comes a fantasy. If I want to kill my dad, he will want to kill me. This is the normal Oedipus complex. But for Freud, it is not the threat of death. It is for Freud and the Jews, that's something totally wrong, which is the fact that circumcision happens in the very beginning of life. And for Muslims, it happens in infancy too, in childhood too. But circumcision gives a false issue to the complex. With circumcision, you do not get a threat. You get a realization of the threat. It's a realization that forces everything. Because if you are harmed, well, then you escape to death. You are punished for your desire, for your incestuous desires. You are already punished. The threat is realized. So you get through it. It's a trick. When circumcision exists, it is a trick in the Oedipus complex, which wrongs it totally.
He has published many articles on sexual mutilation and the harm that it causes. Go ahead, tell us about that.
Well, yes, actually, I've gathered 190,000 views on academia and 60,000 on ResearchGate. And on academia, I've got 1,900 followers. So it seems I've become quite a star of sexual mutilation. I'm sorry. Of course, there are two other very important people in this field who are Professor Sami Aldeb, who wrote a book called Masculine and Feminine Sexual Mutilation, the medical, sociological, and religious debate. And of course, the American Ronald Goldman, who's a psychologist who wrote a famous book called Circumcision, the Hidden Trauma. So these are the three persons who gained some fame in this terrible field.
Have you met any of them?
No. So I've spoken of this first general article, sexual mutilation, discriminatory. Discriminatory is most important. Discriminatory means that you discriminate that circumcision or excision. Discriminate the child, the community, and the rest of humanity. This is the central point about sexual mutilation. Discrimination, which is, let's say, racism. It's an artificial, surgically created racism, which is this is the greatest form of racism that may exist, because you are not only a racist because of skin color, of so many physical, natural details, but you create one especially for yourself. And I forgot the main point in this discrimination is that due to it, you think of yourself and of the community as morally superior to others. Wow, that's that. Well, it's the paradigm of discrimination and racism. So let's go. I have two other articles which I'm very proud of. One that begins with the foreskin is a lip. This is very special, a lip, just like those are lips, and those cover the eyes exactly like the foreskin covers the glands. The foreskin is a lip. It's excision, to compare with feminine excision, is a mutilation. Is mutilation. It is the foreskin, the excision of the foreskin is mutilation. This is very, very certain. Well, the third article I'm proud of is, well, and in this I will appeal to all the community of intactivists. I appeal to find a statistician, and I will pay the statistician. I'm ready to pay for it. I think maybe he will ask a high price, but I really need one, because the title of this article is a preliminary poll little orgasms are ignored by 82% of circumcised that ignore little orgasms when they are known by 90% of intact men. And a little orgasms are, well, very enjoyable. That's all I can say. I could read to you my article, a lecture that I made at Anglophore, presentation against sexual mutilation in front of 4,000 persons at the Anglophore 2024 Reggae Festival. In the middle of the Reggae Festival, I gave this presentation. I began by, I have a dream, the abolition of sexual mutilation. I hate the word genital mutilation because sexual mutilation is not genital mutilation. Genital means that you ablate the gonads, I mean the glands for reproduction. But sexual mutilation, in particular excision, does not impede genitality. Okay, let's go. Sexual mutilation does not exist in the West Indies and among Black Americans. Slave owners banned excision and circumcision because they caused too many deaths through infection and hemorrhage. Jazz and reggae are not music of circumcised people. Neither Bob Marley nor Aimé Césaire claimed Ethiopian genital mutilation. This abolition of the African sexual mutilation was the unique but formidable benefit of slavery. However, excision is only the tip of the iceberg of sexual mutilation. We shall see that circumcision is millions of times more deadly. In any case, excision and circumcision are intimately linked. There is no excision without circumcision. Not only is it sexist to attack only one of the two mutilations, but it is also ineffective. So the best way to put an end to excision is to abolish circumcision. We will examine the subject of circumcision from the angles of morality, law, and its consequences. Firstly, circumcision is morally unacceptable. The human body is sacred, and circumcision is condemned by the three great religions, which may surprise you, but you'll see. Jesus condemned it by receiving baptism with water rather than blood. And Paul, Peter, Thomas Aquinas, and the Council of Jerusalem and Florence, the Councils of Jerusalem and Florence, echoed this condemnation. This little book, it's called The Birth of Judaism Between Exegesis and Egyptology, which is, I think, my greatest book with, the second one, I've just published the second one called Violence and Circumcision, shows that on the one hand, whereas the rabbis make the shameful circumcision criminality a value, an element of sanctity and moral superiority, Abraham, Moses, and the Hebrews fiercely opposed it. It's a great novelty. Nobody knows it yet. Details are explored on Amazon Kindle for €1. This is the title of this book. And on the other hand, the Quran is also opposed to circumcision and excision, of course. You can find it in my article, 23 verses of the Quran. Oh, that's the fourth most important articles I wrote. 23 verses of the Quran against sexual mutilation. It's on the internet and the appendix of the book. 16 verses oppose it indirectly, and 7 radically. The most significant is the following. It's the verse, Surah 30, verse 30. No alteration in God's creation. This is religion in its rectitude. That's clear, isn't it? Concerning millions of Muslims, it is the most formidable weapon against excision and circumcision. Mrs. Million intends to use it in her African bus that goes around Africa against excision. It is often said that excision is not in the Quran. It is true, but it is sexist because neither is circumcision. The Quran is not sexist. Circumcision is also condemned by medical ethics. Article 41 of the Code of Ethics, the French Code of Ethics, stipulates no mutilating operation may be performed without very serious medical grounds. Secondly, the legal point of view. On the one hand, the right of the human being to his or her own body is guaranteed by law. Article 16.1 of the French Civil Code states the human body is inviolable. Article 16.3 states the integrity of the human body may not be infringed except in the case of medical necessity for the person. Parents have no rights over their children's bodies. Under criminal law, genital mutilation, sexual mutilation, is an act of torture and barbarism. Performed on an entire age group, it is a crime against humanity. However, as it is carried out in love and with no intention of causing harm, as the excised women are well aware, so that they do not press charges against their parents, sexual mutilation is not punishable by law. This is a very specific. You may not send mutilators, circumcisers, and excisers to jail. You may not. There's no law against it. Well, not yet. We will see. A major current of contemporary legal thought has focused on the child's right to physical integrity. It describes genital mutilation as discrimination. Article 3.2b of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, from 2000, prohibits, and I quote, eugenic practices, in particular those aiming at the selection of persons. Opening the founder meeting of Excision Parlons-en on 14 June 2013 at the Sorbonne, Mrs. Lager, the president of the National Consultative Commission of Human Rights in France, declared that female and male genital is discriminatory. She was the one who gave me this fundamental idea. In 2021, Sandrine Rousseau wrote in the first version of a presidential program under the heading, Fight Against All Forms of Discrimination, children continue to be victims of violence, in particular concerning female genital mutilation, the circumcision of young boys for religious reasons, etc. On October 2013, the Parliamentary Assembly of the European Community passed a resolution condemning circumcision in the same way as excision. When criminal law will condemn sexual mutilation as discrimination, it will be possible to prosecute excisers without the excised women lodging a complaint. Consequently, if sexual mutilation is the law of a social group, it is an unjust law. We shall see why. Thirdly, the worst consequences of genital mutilation are psychosociological. Sexual mutilation is a mental illness, all the more serious as it is collective. Collective mental illness is very different from an individual mental illness. Individual thought is not affected. A collective, it is affected in the sense that since all the community practices this crime, then I may practice it too, which is wrong. It is a surgically manufactured racism with pretense of moral superiority. It generates counter-racism, the anti-Jewish and anti-Muslim racism. Freud attributed anti-Jewish racism to circumcision, and Spinoza wrote as early as the 17th century. The Jews, having lived apart from all nations in such a way as to attract universal hatred, and this not only by observing external rites opposed to those of other nations, but by the sign of circumcision. Violence against children is a transgenerational phenomenon, a vicious cycle that must be broken. Sexual mutilation is its worst form. We shall see that circumcision generates a particularly high level of violence. Let's look at the forms this violence takes. Moses, who banned circumcision his whole life long, was the first person in history to observe the warmongering of the circumcised. He wrote in the book of Deuteronomy, the duration of our journey had been 38 years. By that time, the entire warrior generation had disappeared. In 2016, this is most important, the Global Peace Index ranked 168 countries according to the absence of war. With regard to the estimated prevalence of circumcision per country, the 30 most peaceful countries had an average circumcision rate of 10% against 68% for the 30 last peaceful. Wars are therefore more frequent in circumcising countries. These last 50 years, wars in the worst classified countries are between 3 and 4 times more frequent. Genocide now is the most characteristic and the worst illustration of the mental illness we are speaking of. With 2 exceptions only, there are no genocides between intact peoples. See my article, Genocide and Circumcision, on the internet. Circumcision creates an abyss of mutual paranoia between the circumcised and the uncircumcised. It is all the deeper because it is based on a blind, infantile belief in the equivalence between wisdom and parental or religious or authority. Confident and loving, children are quick to forgive their parents. This is the Stockholm Syndrome, However, the perpetrators and victims of circumcision are just as guilty as those who tolerate it. Psychiatry teaches that 50% of cases of trauma are likely severe. They may fall into radical fanaticism. Well, since the Munich bombing in 1972, Munich assault, almost all terrorist attacks have been committed by circumcised Islamists. And the same goes for the attacks of American Christians in the USA. Finally, violence against women is much higher in circumcision countries. Feminicide, honor killings, stoning, excision, rape, dry sex, forced obesity, harems, polygamy, forced marriage, veiling, and segregation. Circumcision is thus a harmful cultural practice, a factor in fanaticism. Incidentally, my article, Medicine and Circumcision, on the net, demonstrates the medical and psychological damage caused by circumcision. To conclude, shame must change sides. It can only do so when the law condemns genital mutilation as discrimination.
Hey guys, it's me, Pods. I'm briefly interrupting this interview to let you know about the Pods e-commerce program. It is vital to keeping the Prevail Over the System channel alive. Go and join us on our Discord to learn more. And best of all, it's free to partake in the POTS e-commerce program, and we don't need any of your information whatsoever. This helps us keep the interviews coming along with other Intactivist content to empower, teach, and update Intactivists with very important information, as well as being the voice for the Intactivist public. Thank you all so much. Okay, now back to the interview.
When you get a statistician to work for you,
oh yes,
what are they going to do?
Will be,
and what will you do with the results?
It's about my two. I forgot to tell that my articles, a preliminary poll, which is a very small poll on 300 persons. It is not scientifically valid. This is why I need a statistician to make a poll for. We need 1,000 subjects circumcised and another 1,000 intact to make a scientific poll. I am not a statistician. I cannot do that.
So you need 2,000 men to volunteer for this
yes.
study.
If there is a statistician in the audience, if you can do that, please call me.
So anybody who's a statistician or knows one watching, please contact Michel here. And then that would make the research actually accredited, right?
Yes.
Great. And from there, after you get this legit research done, what would you do with it? How would it be used to help?
Well, I'll just publish it. Oh, if I found a statistician, he succeeds in the task, I think a medical journal will publish it, and it will change. It will change a lot of things in the USA, where the USA, as you know, are very subject to circumcision, which is 80% of men are circumcised, and still going on circumcising, 80% of children.
Have you ever gone to a university to ask a statistics professor?
No, I don't know how to do that.
I think that's a good place to look.
Yes, okay. This statistic must be made in California, because California is the only state in the world without religious issues about circumcision. And it's also the only state in the world there is probably an equilibrium between intacts and circumcised. As many in California, there are as many intacts as circumcised. Therefore, the poll will be far easier to make. This is why an American statistician seems to be more adequate for this job.
Is there another report you'd like to talk about?
Well, the only thing is that I highly recommend my last book, which is called Violence and Circumcision. There are 3 parts in it. The physical damage, the moral damage, the psychosociological damage, and the planetary damage. The planetary damage, wars, genocide, violence against women. That's the subject of this little book. The one I highly recommend. I most highly recommend.
Thank you.
Okay, that was Michel. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm going to put all his links down in the description. If you can help him with that statistician he needs, feel free to message me or him. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our other interviews and our other Intactivist content that we release every single week. Please share and like this video to get this out to more people. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bye!